Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Crypto Byte. Today is Wednesday, May 4th, and it is a big day for the markets today. We've got the FOMC meeting later today. All eyes have been on that for the last couple of weeks. It seems like the market has been kind of leading up to this. So very, very exciting day here today. We're going to break that down and a lot more for you guys before we get started. CJ, how you doing today, my friend?
Doing well, Monty. Today is the big day, like you had said earlier, FOMC. So that's going to be interesting. We'll see if the VIX comes down or not. It looks like things are still very risk on, at least to start, or risk off to start the morning. ARC down a couple percents. But yeah, should be very interesting. And dollar still ripping against Swiss franc, just a straight line upward in that asset pair. But yeah, one thing though, if I may just start with MicroStrategy, they actually said that their margin call, or I guess liquidation price, would be $21,000 Bitcoin if that actually occurs. That's a tough one because, that's not even below the most recent all-time high in 2017. Like, conceivably, there's a decent chance we actually hit that level and then just rally. So, it's a tough spot to have a liquidation or a margin price. I would much rather prefer it at even 17, or 16, just something below the previous all-time high to be safe.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about that much capital. I mean, that is hundreds of millions of dollars at stake. But I mean, we're still a long way from that point. And, like we said, today is a big day for the markets. Like you pointed out, still very much a risk off this morning with the DXY still ticking up and equity is pretty much down across the board. Bitcoin did have a nice, couple of hours last night where we made a nice move up to 39K, since pulling back a little bit, but still showing some pretty nice signs of resilience into this market weakness. That being said, like you pointed out, still very much risk off, but will today's meeting be the catalyst to change that? We'll see. But like you said, I think some of the signs to watch, ARC still down, that's kind of a bastion for risk tolerance, in traditional equity markets. That is still down today, telling us that, we're not exactly back to risk on yet. So plenty of charts to dive into today. I'm sure they may look a lot different tomorrow, but still worth breaking them down as we lead into the FOMC meeting. Anything you would like to lead us off with here today, CJ?
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the assets. It's very interesting that, you actually see Bitcoin rallying, whereas you see NASDAQ selling off, you see ARC selling off. If we go back to just a very simple BTC ARC pair trade,
Which you can trade on Mirrored Protocol.
Yeah. New computer today. Why don't you go ahead first so I can enable the screen sharing settings? Would appreciate that. No problem.
Let's start with Bitcoin here. Like CJ pointed out, look at Bitcoin showing some signs of resilience here today. Still minting this green candle. We moved up from roughly 37.6 up to, like I said, roughly 39K. And all of that while, this morning we got the NASDAQ down. We've got the Qs down. And one thing that we've been talking a lot about, obviously, is that historically high correlation between Bitcoin and the NASDAQ. But today, we're not really seeing that same correlation that we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks here, starting to show signs of divergence. So, that could be because of anticipation around the FOMC meeting, or it could just be because, Bitcoin is just a bit behind in terms of the NASDAQ. But either way, it is encouraging to see Bitcoin showing those signs of resilience. And you can say the same thing really about ETH as well. ETH still up on the day, whereas, like I pointed out, most of the traditional equity market down. And it was a rough 24 hours for the altcoins, but some of them are starting to come back here today as well. So AVAX still up today, Solana up today, Cardano up pretty notably today. And all of that with a relatively weak traditional equity market. So in my mind, that's kind of, foreshadowing for perhaps a bounce following this FOMC meeting. Because, one thing that some analysts at Market Rebellion have pointed out on cocktail hours and during other analysis is that, there are certain instances where the crypto market can act as a leading indicator for the traditional equity markets. And last night, Bitcoin did see some really nice price action, perhaps in anticipation of some positive price action in the equity market later today. So, still got to watch that FOMC meeting. All eyes are going to be on that. It's obviously incredibly important, but still encouraging signs from Bitcoin leading into that. But CJ, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say Bitcoin is actually putting in somewhat of a nice rounding pattern. And it does look relatively decent in terms of just like an actual bottoming pattern. And yeah, if it were to bounce from support, I mean, right now looks like a prime example. Yesterday we talked about the puts being bought in consumer staples, as well as the calls being bought in ARK, as well as Mara. So we'll see if those come to fruition. But overall, expecting kind of a positive outcome from the FOMC, and ultimately, might see some bullish price action. But I mean, in the FX market, dollar has still been very strong across the board, and so that's definitely something you're going to want to watch for as well to see if it comes down in time. One thing I noticed today was that Waves finally squeezed and is up like 16%, I believe.
Yeah.
So you poke the beehive long enough, and it's gonna squeeze.
Yep. But already coming back down a bit from those highs. We'll see how long it can hold this squeeze. Historically has not held up well when it's had these, brief instances of short squeezes. Really, the only positive price action that this thing's had over the last couple of weeks have been these short squeezes. So we'll see if this one can lead to anything or if it will be sustained. But in all likelihood, it does look like this thing's going to continue down and retest these critical levels down here at $8. But CJ, I think, like you pointed out, the FX market is one thing that a lot of people watching today, obviously with the Fed meeting, and the DXY. Although it has been looking somewhat toppy, still continuing to hang out at these levels. A lot of people have been calling for a possible, move back down to this moving average, and that would mark a move to more risk on assets. Have not seen that yet. And just to throw a couple assets on your radar to watch, I think later today, like CJ said, I think ARK is a good one to watch as a possible mover after the FOMC meeting. It's obviously, like we said earlier, a very high beta asset and one that benefits from risk on market environments. Another one, CJ, you briefly mentioned this one, but Marathon Digital. This one has been, beaten up hard over the last couple of months in this risk off market, just not traded at all. It has, thrived when the market is doing well, even outperformed Bitcoin, but not anything worth noting recently. That may change after the Fed meeting here today if we do get that switch to a more risk on market environment. But, all of that, like I said, is contingent on a positive meeting later today from the Fed. So, yeah. CJ, anything else you would like to add before we wrap things up here today?
Yeah, got a call spread on Mara. So watching that one, I think we're going to see some bullish price action as well. But just want to share price real quick. Seeing this? All good?
Yes.
Yeah. So a couple things I really like about Bitcoin and this current posture, in the sense that we could see a bullish catalyst coming out of FOMC. Thinking that's kind of more of the probable situation, and I think the technicals line up for it pretty well. Also, we're testing this level. We haven't filled it just yet, and we're actually seeing buyers willing to step up at the 37 level. Not saying we can't go lower in the macro trend if we make maybe a lower high right there or something at 42. Obviously, we still have 42 and 45 as very strong resistance. But what I like is that you're already starting to see like this rounding pattern reflected not only in the RSI, but also with a crossover on the MACD. And last time we had one of these crossovers, past couple times, we've had some nice rallies. And the opposite has been true on the bearish side, where you see that momentum after the initial cross. So definitely a couple things to watch for today. But I think Bitcoin is definitely the trade here. But it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say what exactly is going to come out of this FOMC meeting, but one thing that is definitely certain is Bitcoin showing signs of resilience leading into it, and that is encouraging and certainly worth noting. So, thank you for that breakdown. But I think that is all we got for today. We do have a member webinar at 11:30 Central where we break down anything you guys have question-wise. The hour is all yours to get your questions in, and we very much look forward to it. But that is all we got for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. Take care.